Hi, this is Tracy, and I at Tuesday with Tracy's. We are here in Randy Armour's office. This is Randy,
Hi.
and Randy actually is my personal attorney for our trust, and he helped my husband and I with some estate planning. We had a trust done several years ago, and realized that it was massively out of date. And Randy graciously agreed to do a little interview to help educate you on the value and why it's so important to have a trust done. And I'm just going to kind of pick on myself. When my husband and I met with Randy several years ago, we realized that two of the key decision people in our old trust, one had passed away and the other was terminally ill and dying of cancer. So the people that we had entrusted to follow out our instructions wouldn't be able to do that. So even if you have a trust, having it reviewed and updated is super important. So I'm going to let Randy take the reins here and explain a little bit about what it is you do with your big estate planning.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. I've been an estate planner for approximately 22 years now. My background, though, was in real estate.
Yeah.
So the two are actually closely connected, which is one of the reasons I like what I do, helping people, especially people who buy homes, and explaining why it is so important to have a proper estate plan in place. Without an estate plan, there are laws that California has that determine where your assets will go. Now, sometimes that plan is what you'd want anyway, say if you want to leave it to your children. But even though we know where the assets are going to go, if you pass away and you own a house, it's in your name, you don't have a plan set up, getting that house even transferred to your children is probably going to take a year to a year and a half in court through a process called probate, which is the legal process of transferring the assets of a deceased owner. So one of the things we do with an estate plan, typically using a trust, is set up a document that will allow your wishes to be carried out without having to go through that court process. There are a lot of other things the trust will do, a lot of other advantages.
Well, I wanted to speak to that too. Isn't that process expensive?
Not only is it very time consuming, but it is very expensive, yes. So essentially, the attorneys will be the beneficiaries of your estate, along with your family or whoever else you want to leave things. Because the law says they get a percentage of your assets to go through this process, which is going to take typically about a year to a year and a half for a simple probate.
Well, okay, so so again, our title was the value of having a trust. So what I understand that all probates are, they're different, but an average probate sale, what could somebody expect to have to pay out of a trust? Let's say, out of a probate, let's say the assets are valued around $800,000.
Well, there's actually a formula.
Okay.
It's statutory, meaning the law says what the attorney can charge. And it's 4% of the first $100,000 of assets, 3% of the next 100,000, 2% of everything over that up to $1 million, and then it scales down from there. But when you're looking at the value of the assets, say there's an $800,000 home with a $600,000 mortgage.
Right.
The attorney's fees are based on the full market value, not the equity. So it doesn't matter how much equity you have. The fees are based on the full fair market value. Wow. So it's based on the $800,000.
So right off the bat, they're getting $32,000.
Well, they're getting a lot of money.
Wow, that's a lot of money, you guys. Holy cow.
Yeah. And then the time, because it's very frustrating. You lose a family member, let's say a parent, and now you have to spend a year in court, and you're grieving, obviously, the loss. And now you're having to deal with attorneys and the court process just to get the assets transferred. With the trust, the process can be extremely easy. You put somebody in charge, and the trust gives them the authority upon your death to transfer the assets themselves to the beneficiaries without having to go through any court process. And that's just really one of the benefits of a trust.
Sure. And we were talking a little bit earlier about, people that have been married and then they remarry and they have children, and I was really taken by that when Lloyd and I were talking with you about how children can be accidentally disinherited because people just don't know a better way to protect them because they're just not informed. And again, this is one of the reasons why I like to do these quick little informationals. I just want to help educate you with the best possible talent out here in our valley, how you can better protect yourself and your family, especially when it comes to real estate. So that one was
Unfortunately, that happens a lot, where maybe it's a second or third marriage, and each spouse has children from a prior marriage. Without proper planning, there's a good chance that one of the spouse's children will be, as you said, accidentally disinherited, just because of the way the laws are set up. If a couple buys a house as joint tenants, which, by the way, for tax purposes, for most people is not the right way, but that's another
that's
subject.
another topic. Okay, we'll be back.
But if they buy a house as joint tenants, that means there's a right of survivorship. So the house will automatically pass to the surviving spouse upon the death of the first spouse.
Sure.
If the second spouse doesn't have something set up and they pass away, the law says that the assets will go to that second spouse's heirs at law, which
Wow.
means to their children. So the children of the first spouse that passed away would oftentimes get nothing, even though the understanding of the spouses was maybe things would get split.
Sure.
It's just the way their laws are set up.
Sure.
So if you don't have a plan in place to cover that, then they don't always understand what's going to happen if they pass away.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope you got some value out of this. We've got Randy's information at the bottom of this, and any of you that are looking to update your trusts, or after hearing this you think it's a darn good idea to do some estate planning, Randy Yummer's been out here for quite a long time, and he'll take good care of it. He did my trust, my husband, yes, of course, my dad and my brother, so we trust him quite a bit. Thank you so much for joining us today.